So that we're going to get on to our next database. So close this out. So if you're on CWU's library page and you want to get to academic databases, that is, you're not browsing through OneSearch, you're going to go down to our search and find widget. Here's a OneSearch, and here's databases by title. So in databases by title section, you can browse through databases by titles, and these are all organized alphabetically. So we're going to look at our first database, which will be Academic Search Complete. So I click here, Academic Search Complete. It also tells you a little bit about what it is: a scholarly, multidisciplinary, full-text database with a lot of content. It also has some mobile info, so if you want to look at it on your smartphone, you might be able to do that. Click on it. So EBSCO Academic Search Complete, we're going to use the same kind of search strategies we developed in our library database. With OneSearch. It's just the user interface is a little different. So before we get to doing any of this, we want to scroll down. We want to set our operators to Boolean. We want to limit our results to full text. You don't really need to worry about document type unless you really want like abstracts. You can also look at PDF full text, but this isn't really necessary. The reason for that being is if you can get the content in HTML, you can at least read it. You can look at, the one thing though that you do need to hit is this tab here, peer reviewed, because you're interested in peer reviewed scholarly secondary sources. So you need to get this one. Like go in, like when you're using Academic Search Complete, apply this filter. So if we scroll back up, these are our Booleans. We just want to leave them alone. We can also select our field the same way you could in OneSearch. It's a little more extensive, but a lot of these numbers are just not, a lot of these categories are just not really going to be pertinent to what you're searching for. So you can, the only ones that I would really mess around with are subject terms, title, and author. But if you leave it as the default setting, it'll go through kind of all these fields automatically. So let's repeat the same search we did last time. Women in, So one cool thing that EBSCO does is it will try to give you these preferred terms here in the system. So if you see, for example, that I want to look at women in advertising and it starts to pop up, then you can click it and it'll do it. And now it goes away. So away we go. So our top result is la segregación vertical y horizontal en las agencias de publicidad antes de la ley. So as you can see, it's in Spanish. It's probably not going to be, unfortunately, pertinent to what you're looking for. But once we get down, we can start to see like English results popping up. Gender policies and advertising marketing factors affect women's health, et cetera, et cetera. One of the reasons why EBSCO gave us these preferred terms is that they appear in these subject categories. And as we kind of went through in the in-class lecture, these are a really good way to find content you want very, very quickly. So for example, if I look through a tag and I see things like, advertising in our subject headings, or I see like women in advertising, I know that this is probably going to be good. Not only that, but if I see these other little tabs appear here, like women in popular culture, sex in advertising, sex symbolism, these could be really helpful. So we're going to start applying these filters, and you're going to see really quickly how this narrows down our content really fast. So let's go, excuse me while I scroll back. Let's look at women in advertising, sex in advertising. So scrolling back up, we're going to add that as one of our terms, sex in, and it comes right up. So now I'm down to 21 results, because what EBSCO is doing is it's going through these subjects and it's matching my results. Women in advertising, women in popular culture, sex in advertising. So this is probably going to be a very good article if these are the issues I'm interested in, because these subject tags have been applied here. You can also see that all the other content is very, very similar. I know it's going to be about advertising, and I know right out the gate that sex is going to be kind of a big feature in sort of the content discussed. Once you've got that, there are a couple little tools you can use to record your citations. There's one you can look at. If I mouse over the little magnifying glass, there it goes. It'll bring up a little summary of it, so I can see I have my authors, I have my journal it was published in, I have my subjects, and my abstract. So generally speaking, when we're doing kind of research, you want to spend time reading the abstracts, because this tells you whether or not you necessarily want to read the article. So if you're looking, for example, women in the US, and you click on this one, you can see advertisements are specifically pertinent to this Turkish cosmopolitan of the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Now I think this actually could be really cool, but if you're not interested in what Cosmopolitan was doing in Turkey in the last 20 25 years, it might not be pertinent to sort of the research that you want to do. If you do want to cite it, though, you can click this little icon here, and this moves it to my folder. Once you sign into your EBSCO account, you can start uploading things to your folder and use that in turn to generate citations. All right, so just to walk you through how that works, if you go to my sign-in page, here's your username or password. If you haven't made a new account, you'll need to do that, but that's not too hard. So let's go back up. So let's say this didn't, there's also something that you might want to think about when you're looking through things in Academic Search Complete, and that is the difference between terms. So women in advertising and women in advertisements are actually different terms in this system. So you can see, like, I click that, and suddenly I'm getting different results, right? I have content here. I have like these, like, that's a little bit different from what you saw in women in ads. So it just means that these are like different sort of preferred terms in the system and generate different results. So, you know, one thing you can do that I personally found helpful is to take the time to go through and think about like how, you know, you can use different synonyms to get better results, and like how we can, you know, sort of use like synonyms to broaden our searches and improve sort of the quality of the results we get. And it's important because, you know, like human beings, we have a lot of terms for different things. We have a lot of synonyms. We have different ways of expressing the same concept, and you need to like apply that principle to a search engine. Remember, this will also get you your citation, so you can look through, read it, decide whether or not you want to look at it. This will add it to your folder. Let's see here. If you're going through, based on your folders, you can generate bibliographies. Also, if you've installed Zotero and Mendeley on it, it'll also do that as well. Okay. Anyway, so let's move on to our next database. So we're going to close out OneSearch. So the next database I want to talk about works a little bit differently than kind of the content we've gone through earlier, and that's Project Muse. So here's Project Muse. This can be accessed a couple different ways. You can go through by database by title, starts the project, click P. We're going to get to it a little bit differently. So if we go to databases by subject, we can see this is another page where journals are organized by the subjects they contain. So if we look at women's studies here and scroll down, here we go, Project Muse. So Project Muse is a page where you can look directly at books or journals. You'll need to be logged in again to CWU to do this. You can see it on the tab on the top. So what you do is you're going to navigate. You can navigate through this search menu, but the best way to do it, I found, is to go directly to the research area. So Women's Studies, Gender and Sexuality, click on that. And it should populate pretty fast. So there's a couple of filters you're going to want to apply to this. So these are these are books mostly, and like you know you can access it this way, but it's oftentimes not the best way to do it. If you want to save the citation, you can also do that by clicking right here. But what we want to do is, first of all, limit content to anything I have access to, because not everything on Muse, unfortunately, is something you can get, and this limits it down to these little green check marks here. So if we go to here, this is something I have access, these are free samples, these are open access, and this bar like little thing indicates restricted access. I can also apply this journal filter, but it seems like it's already been kind of done for me. So what this allows you to do is you can actually go through the different journals and browse through kind of like journals to look at issues related to kind of women's studies, gender, and sexuality. When I was kind of poking around, Camera Oscura is really, really nice. It is, you know, devoted itself to providing innovative feminist perspective on film, television, and visual media. So if you're looking at like women in advertising, this is going to be a pretty good database to look at. If you're looking at more kind of like feminist issues or sort of broader kind of means to understand and critique ideas, this is also something you can get through journal content. But to sort of get back to Camera Obscura for a second, just to kind of highlight what Muse does, we click on the link. And here we go. So it gives us our available issues. I can browse issues by date. I can also search the journal. I can look at the journal's information. So sometimes like you want to just browse through this content and look for something that you think might be helpful. So I click on the first one, which is 2004. Magnificent Obsession is kind of the theme they were organizing it around, and I can see like these are the articles that come up. There's two ways you can open these. You can open it in HTML, which is just like an online version of the page, or if you want to download it, you want to click Access Articles PDF, and then you can download it. So for example, if you're using an online tool like Zotero or Mendeley, at this point, you can download these tools, like download your PDFs and upload them into either Zotero or Mendeley, and then it'll automatically be saved for you, and you're going to use that to generate the citation. Anyway, that about does it for Project Muse. So let's move on to our next database, Sociological Abstracts. So we get to our SOC abstracts. You can either access it on this page, but I personally like things alphabetized. So you go by title, because it starts with the letter S, and then you just scroll down through until you find Sociological Abstracts. So Sociological Abstracts is a tool that allows us to get access to a lot of cutting-edge sociological research. It has sort of information about the database here. It's these abstracts and indexes, international literature of sociology. And it's quite broad, and it's very, very good. These are some of the subjects they covered, like family and marriage, culture and social structure, poverty and homelessness, and so on and so forth. So we want to click on Advanced Search here. Oh, that's exciting. You know, it's the great thing about technology. Sometimes it just doesn't work exactly the way it should. Aha, there we go. So Albert Einstein had kind of a joke for these situations. It said that, the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And Einstein was right. That is crazy. But when it comes to technology, sometimes it's just a little crazy. Anyway, so the interface we're looking at is not going to be that different from the content we've already looked at in sort of other databases. Scholarly journals and peer-reviewed are both tabs we want to click. Publication date, you can filter this. The filters are a little more advanced, so you can filter down to the last 3 months or create like a specific range before and after are also good options. Source type, generally you don't need to mess with this, but if you're looking for something specific, it's an option. You can rank results by relevance or by publication date. I recommend relevance. You don't want to include duplicates. It's just a waste of time. If it's duplicating results, it doesn't do you any good. One useful widget you can look at here is the thesaurus. So sometimes databases have preferred terms. The thesaurus will tell you what those terms are. But we can kind of go through the same process we went through last time. So we look at anywhere. We can have abstract, author, document title. You can modify this, but generally leaving it in anywhere is fine. So women in advertising. So you can see, right, we're generating all these sort of preferred subject headed things like women in advertising, women in adverts, black women in advertising, images of women in advertising. So let's mix it up a little bit. Images of women advertising and Nike. So here we have all of our Nike content. Nike PR might be pretty good. Nike ad, stuff like this. And let's say we're doing a comparison. So let's pick, like, for example, like a different sort of clothing brand. I don't know, like, or content, like shoes. And I'll click search. Okay, so sometimes this happens. It's a little too specific. So if you get results where you get like no content, just start backing it up. So now we have 3 results. That's who I want to be. The politics and production of desire within Nike advertising to women, emancipation or colonization, Nike and its advertisements in a post-feminist era, Nike's commercial solutions, girls, sneakers, and salvation. So you can see if we're writing about women in advertising and Nike, this gets you a lot of really nice, a lot of information very quickly. So what you're going to generally do is the UI on this one is a little different in terms of citing things. Most of you should kind of already be familiar with how to cite things sort of in EBSCO, but there's a little tab on the right that'll do it, or you save it to your folder and you can generate the citation from there. This one doesn't rely on folders the same way. What you do is you're going to look at these little cite tabs or export and save. You can export it to a variety of different content. So what I can do is I can look at the citation abstract. I click on that, and I can see here's my abstract. And if I click cite, I get a citation. So this is an APA. We're going to close, and I would just copy and paste this into a Word document or into whatever sort of Gizmo or Zotero or Mendeley or whatever I happen to be using. So this is our abstract, this is our index. Let's go back to results. No, thank you. So the next thing, though, is that not all this content we're looking at is actually going to be available in sociological abstracts. It's a good database, but it's just we don't have access to all of it just yet. So if I click on this, you can see I can get to the abstract, but it doesn't appear that I might have. In this particular case, I don't think I have like full access to the document itself. So if you see this right and you kind of feel stymied, don't panic. A lot of these things, you can get through ILL or by talking to your librarian, or you can find like some workaround for it. So this is kind of the same way. You can see all I can do is look at the abstract, and I can't actually get to the content. This is the major kind of drawback of using sociological abstracts, but as you can see, it's still a really nice database. And if you can't find it, what you can do is you can click this little link here. And it will try to go through your system and see if it can track it down. So here's our Alliance Primo, Ex Libris group, and then here's CW's handle. And in this case, we found it. So it works. So through CW's portal, it takes us to SAGE, Journal of Sports Issues. That's who I want to be. And here's our abstract, and here we see our full text PDF, free to you. So in this case, it worked out nicely. If it doesn't work out, again, it doesn't mean you can't get to the content. It just means you might need to talk to a librarian first. But in general, if it doesn't automatically come up here as available, push find it, and sometimes it'll be available through a different platform on, Central's webpage. So let's get back to our main page. We can look, these are our AND operators, and then this is also another little filter you can apply that's full text. So when I click on full text, it'll limit it, the search limits it to content available directly through Soc abstracts. There are pros and cons to using this. As we saw earlier, sometimes it actually is possible to get to content not available. No, thank you. Sometimes it's possible to actually get to content not contained in in our sociological abstracts database through someplace else. And if you click this, you might not find sort of a potentially valuable article. Like if I was doing a report on women in Nike, I would be citing that piece. So you can kind of play around with this feature, but don't be married to it. Like these two, you have to click. This one is it's kind of give or take, really. Just it comes down to sort of personal preference. So the last database we have time to cover is JSTOR. So, to be honest, JSTOR it's a good database. There are some sort of serious limitations with it. The first problem is it doesn't really it looks like it does Boolean operators, but it doesn't work quite the way we would hope. So Booleans generally should limit our searches down. JSTOR sometimes and will limit it down. Sometimes it'll interpret and as give me this and then give me something else. So instead of narrowing your search down, you actually broaden it. So if we go women in advertising, right? I can also add any number of fields I want, which is kind of nice, but this can actually muddle your results. So try to pick start with one or two and then start adding more from there. Because at least that way, if it doesn't work, you can kind of go back to an area where at least you knew you had content. So JSTOR will look at full text, so it'll look through the entirety of an article for any mention of women in advertising. Looks through authors, item title, abstract, or caption. I've actually found that abstract is a really good tool because oftentimes you don't want to read through an entire 300-page manuscript script if it only appears once. But if you're looking through an abstract, that means that in the analysis or the summary of content, it was sort of positioned here, and you know that it's going to appear other times, sort of in the article itself. Only will include content I can see. Obviously, you want to click this one because JSTOR is really, really broad, and if it's not content hosted in JSTOR, you probably don't need to bother with it. You can narrow by articles. I generally would advise clicking this because journal articles are really what you want to find in JSTOR. Actually, JSTOR is one of those areas where applying the English filter is pretty smart because it is a really international database, and it has articles and all these content. So English, if you're looking for English-specific content, this is a filter you want to apply. Or if you're looking for articles only in Spanish or Italian, go ahead and apply it. Publication title, if you know a journal that you really want to look for, you can apply it here. ISBN, just leave this alone. And then this is our date range. So unlike kind of the databases we saw earlier, I can't sort of filter the range as conveniently as I've done before. But what I can do is, let's say like 2015, since that's here it is right now. Oh, sorry, so that's from. So let's say we want to look at the last 10 years, so 2005 to 2015. These are the formats that JSTOR accepts the date range in. In general, just stick to years, unless you really need like to filter by month. It's more trouble than it's worth. These are journal kind. This is like journals it is sorting through, but in general, unless you know like in advance, like a journal you're going after, just don't mess with this. So search. All right, so women in advertising, and here's this operator. It's being applied ing or ing. So politics, economy, truth in advertising regulations during the progressive era. So what's happening is women in advertising is appearing in this abstract, but it doesn't seem like it's very germane to the content I actually want. Sex. This is a little bit better. So sex in advertising, gender differences in the role of relationship commitment. So we can see here. Here's our authors, Journal of Consumer Research, loading additional content. I can read it online or I can download the PDF. But again, JSTOR, as we're kind of seeing right now, is not as precise as the other tools we've looked at. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying, respect the fact it has some limitations. So if I go like Nike, for example, I click search. So note, here's a little note above, approximately 10% of articles on JSTOR have abstracts. This is a problem because every article should have abstracts. Like, it's just sort of an expected convention in scholarly literature that if you're going to write like a 50-page article, give me like a paragraph of an abstract so I can figure out whether or not I want to read it. And see, the problem here is we're getting more results, and now we're starting to move away from what I wanted, which was women in advertising, to content that's more related to Nike. So what a Boolean operator really should do is it should only lock in on articles where both of this content appears. And it's just, as we can see, it's not doing that. So if I click on just monitor and improve labor standards, lessons from Nike, this is from SAGE. So if you're interested in Nike, this is probably a really good choice. So here's our abstract. You can see this really has nothing to do with women in advertising. It's just content germane to Nike. And this is in my opinion, one of the big limitations of JSTOR is it has Boolean operators. They just don't work the way they say they do. So we're going to need to modify again. So sometimes we can try full text. So I'll click search. So now it's actually getting Nike the Temple. Material intervention. So this is probably pretty good if I was looking at sort of Indonesian DI fashion, the regime of the global brand might be pertinent to both Nike and women. But private attorneys in general in the First Amendment, like, it's hard to imagine how this is relevant to the content I'm looking for. So the issue you're going to run into with JSTOR is its search tools are, out of all the databases we've looked at, the least precise, and that doesn't make it content in JSTOR is just as valid as content you get from anywhere else. You're just probably going to have to do more work to sort of get to the articles that you want. Anyway, that's really all the time we have here. I hope you've enjoyed my demo of these different databases. And if you have any questions, I encourage you to talk to either the Writing Center or the librarian at your institution.